So pricing. The pricing case that we have here is of a toll plaza. So the case is a construction giant is seeking your help to determine the toll charges for a proposed bridge in Mumbai. What advice would you give them? Now, in a pricing case, the methodology is pretty straightforward. You really end up having 4 strategies, out of which the first 3 are the ones that are most useful. You will typically start the case by understanding the company, the product, the competition, the customer. Here, okay, you might understand a little bit about the company, what do they do. Product, you might want to understand a lot of things about the bridge. Now you might ask them you might ask some details right now and some details when you're really making the doing the analysis. There probably would not be a competition, but you might ask, okay, what is the bridge really replacing? What kind of a route is it replacing? And then who are the most likely users of this road bridge that we are constructing? So from a better problem solving perspective, from showing that you're a better problem solving perspective, it's really important that you first clarify these things before you jump into the strategies. Now, the first aspect is cost-based pricing. And this really more often than not ends up being the lower bound. The idea is very simple. If it takes 10 rupees to build something, you charge a 10% markup and you sell it for 11. That's it. Okay. Now, clearly from this, when you price something like this, you're very inward focus. You don't want to be that always. Sometimes you're creating beautiful, valuable things. There you don't, things where, let's say, intellectual, what do you call it? Intellectual promises are involved. You wouldn't want to just value the cost there. You will then like to think it from the perspective of, how is the market behaving? And this is where you look at the competitor. That typically people who sell this, how do they sell? Now, if it's a highly commoditized product, the whole market might itself be going from a cost perspective. And we might not have an alternative. So here, what do we typically do in a competitive based? I typically make a table. Okay, this is A, our client, and B, a competitor. You could make one more competitor, C, if you want. I know my customer. I would like to understand what are the things that a customer values. See, 1, 2, 3. Let's take an example. Let's take an example of cream biscuits. Okay. What does the customer value? Okay. Let's see. There has to be prioritization there. So let's say the first thing they value really is the amount of cream. Second thing they might value is, let's say, nutrition and calorie count. Third thing they might value is shape of the biscuit itself, whatever the factors involved. So you list them down and then you try to see. So we have to figure out price for A, whereas B and C are already established in the market. So what we do is we have a discussion and we figure out, okay, our product is creamier than B, has a better nutritional value than B, and is shaped in an interesting manner which will appeal to the consumer. So clearly now what I can do is, if B is selling, let's say, a pack of biscuit for 20 bucks, given I am better than them in every respect, what I can do is I can sell it for 25. Now whether this is 25 or 27 or 22, you cannot really establish that in an interview. So it's better to just have a discussion with the interviewer, but have a sense that it has to be more than 20. That's on competitive. And the last thing really is value-based pricing. Your service, your product might be extremely beneficial to the consumer. So your objective then becomes that if I'm providing so much value to someone, let me then actually ask them to pay me for a part of this value that I'm generating for them. And that's really the value-based pricing method. How do we go about doing this? So first we'll see the case, and then there are a couple of other points that I'll address here. The last strategy is something I'll address after it. So now, construction giant. And as always, we start with an objective. What's the objective of the problem? Okay. Is the objective really to make money? Is the objective, and is it like certain amount of percentage that is there? Is the objective to recover whatever has been spent? Okay. So let's say the client's objective at this point of time is to just do a feasibility study as step one, which is to say, can I even recover the money if I invest in this project? To, let's say, understand the potential of money making. Okay. My approach will not change quite a bit, but obviously if I'm looking at a feasibility perspective, then cost-based pricing is what will kick in. I would have anyways done that to get a sense of the lower bound, assuming a project is feasible. So then the next question really becomes, what are the costs involved? So 7,000 crores, we get an answer from the interviewer. It's very rare that you will be asked to build this up. Okay. But you could build, because you already know the details of the project. And let me share that here. So let's say you ask the details of the project. Let's say connects 2 points A to B in Mumbai. Okay. These are questions I would ask before I even go for the cost. So the bridge is like this. Okay. It's about, let's say it's about 10 kilometers. So the next question is, okay, this is the bridge. You might ask what materials it made of if you have to build cost ground up. But if that's not required, and you could do that by, asking amount of concrete used, amount of steel used, amount of time that is required to build the bridge. You could then assume what's the labor cost for it, probably technology cost for it. You can actually build the cost ground up by how you would do an estimation problem. Okay. But let's not do that here. Our question is, what is it replacing? So in some sense, what's a competitor like? Right now, the route from A to B goes through the heart of the city. This bridge is through the sea, and right now we go through the heart of the city, and this right now on an average takes about 2 hours of a journey to cover. So really the benefit of the bridge is, and this 10 kilometer can be covered in 10 minutes. So really the advantage of the bridge is the sheer amount of time saving that it develops. So great. So I have some clarity on the situation. I might ask a couple of more questions. Okay, can you tell me a little bit about A and a little bit about B? Am I connecting one posh area to another posh area? Is B an office area? A is larger residential area. So I would know that there's a stable flow. If let's say residence and offices are the two parts which are connected, so I know that there will be a more stable traffic flow that is there. So you could ask all of these initial questions. Then I jump to my cost. So I say, what are the costs of construction? And I get an answer, 7,000 crores. Now is really the time when you have to be more context aware of your context. What are the two things you would want to ask? A, given it's a development project, given it's good for the city, good for the country eventually. So is my client really bearing all the cost, or some of the cost is partially borne by the government, which in form of a grant, or by some development organization, which need not be covered. So really, is 7,000 my real cost? Is there something which will reduce this cost? And at the same time, we often forget that things take maintenance also. So are there things which will add to this cost? Because that's also part of the recovery I have to make. So a big mistake here would be to assume that 7,000 crore is as it is. Perhaps not including minus is okay, but you would earn, I think, brownie points by mentioning that there are maintenance costs also and other costs which might have to be recovered. So let's create that pool, and let's say it takes about let's say about 70 crores, 1%, or let's say 0.1%, so about 35 crores of maintenance charge every year. Okay. So point number one done, point number two done. Then I would want to know what's the life of the bridge. Okay. Because if I'm to, like, it comes to me intuitively when I'm talking about, okay, I have to incur maintenance every year, then I have to see for how many years am I really incurring the maintenance. So let's say it's 50 years, and when I'm dealing with such a huge time frame, my question has to be around time value. And here I will make my life simple, and just assuming that, let's assume that there's no impact of time value of money, and 1 rupee today is the same as 1 rupee 50 years later. Okay. Otherwise, the problem will become extremely difficult to solve. So that's what I do. I just assume that, okay, fine, this is the case, and I do 35 into 50, which is 1750. If you can't do it quickly, you know that 30 into 50 is 1500. 40 into 50 is 2000, and your number has to be in the middle of this, so 1750. I add that to my 7000 crores, so my cost becomes 8750. That's really what I recover. And let's say there is no development aid or anything of that sort. Okay. Or let's say there is development aid of 750 crores, which simplifies my number to 8000 crores. That's really the cost I have to recover. The life of the bridge is also important because it gives me a sense of the recovery period, okay, which is 50 years. Now, an important question can be about the risks involved. And really, I mean, you might have realized that even in the VCP, M&A framework, we were focused a lot on risk. Whenever we're talking about time dimensions, when you are putting in money and time is involved, risk has to be a quintessential dimension of your analysis. Now, while I'm saying 50 years, what really is the risk I'm talking about here? That will this bridge, so one is it can fall. In this case, I'm sure that I would have some form of insurance, something of that sort. It's very hard for a bridge to fall. It's probably not really a risk. But the bigger risk is that the traffic pattern might change. Bombay 50 years ago is different from Bombay today. And Bombay 50 years later might be very different. Maybe cars themselves are less relevant. People start moving to more and more public transport. Maybe A and B that I'm considering here no longer are the area that they are. Main office shift space in Bombay shift to another place C. So this route really becomes untenable. So while I'm giving 50 years of the life, I can see that there are certain risks involved, and my recovery period cannot be 50 years. I'm going to shorten it. And let's say for this case, let's just assume I shorten it to 40 years. Okay. So I have to recover my cost over 40 years. Now, I can really assume a linear kind of, for the sake of simplicity, I can assume a linear, what do I call it? A linear recovery. So on a per year basis, I have to recover 8000 crores over 40 years, which means I have to recover 200 crores per year from the bridge. Okay. Now, let's see what's really the capacity of the bridge. Okay, because I in the end have to charge for toll, and I have to see whether the toll is enough to give me this much money or not. Now, what's the practical capacity of the bridge going to depend upon? Well, it's a two-way bridge. So, and every way you will have a number of lanes. So let's say it's a huge bridge and there are 8 lanes into 2. So 8 lanes on each side. So there are 16 entry points. And let's say there are 16 toll plazas eventually that we will have. Right. Now, I have to estimate what is how many cars am I really talking about here. One very, very difficult way of estimating this would be, you know, you get A, what is B about, what is A about, and you will really try to understand that what kind of population layers, what are the drivers of traffic, and all of those things. That's a very difficult problem to solve for. Alternatively, what we can do is we can use the bottleneck approach, okay, which is try to estimate the practical capacity of the bridge. What does that mean? Well, there is a toll plaza. At every toll plaza, you would have realized from your experience, a car takes a certain amount of time. You go there, you stop, you have to pay, there's some verification, and then you go. Even if everything is automatic, there might be some amount of time that has to be spent. Let us say per toll plaza, a car takes 10 seconds to cross. So now really I have a practical capacity of the bridge, okay, that irrespective of how many people want to travel from A to B, given there are 86,400 seconds in a day divided by 10, that gives me 8,640. Per lane of the bridge, not more than 8,640 cars can pass by. And let's make a simplifying example. Let's assume that only one type of vehicle that we're dealing with, passenger cars. No trucks, no commercial cars, nothing of that sort. Okay. You have to do all of these because we are just doing an estimation, getting a ballpark sense. So it doesn't matter. We can add 10, 15, 20% anywhere to change the final number. Okay. But I hope this point is clear. This is very akin to what I was talking about in terms of the, the number of flights problem or the Rajiv Stock metro station problem in guesstimates. So let's make it a even number, 8,000. And per toll plaza, only 8,000 cars can pass by. Now, obviously, traffic will vary throughout the day. You can take those considerations into account. There will be peak periods, there will be medium periods, there will be low period. Given I'm solving for so many things in the case, let's just make it 5,000. Okay. Assuming I consider all the variations in a day, and about 5,000 cars can pass through this bridge, through one lane of this bridge. Over 16 lanes, this becomes 80,000 cars. So every day, the bridge sees a traffic of 80,000 cars. Now, the question really becomes whether I can recover the money or not. Okay. So the problem here that we have is 200 crores in a year to be recovered by 80,000 cars. Into what? Into 365. Assuming traffic goes all day, okay, you could simplify your calculations. Let's make it 250. Okay, that only weekdays are considered. Obviously, we're just taking big numbers. I'm just doing this on the sake of ease of calculation. So my dollar value, my cost, 200 into 10 to the power 7, 8 into 10 to the power 4, into 25 into 10. 25 into 8 is 200. I cancel it out. 10 to the power 4, 10 to the power 3, 10 to the power 2, 100. So if I charge every car 100 rupees over 40 years, I can recover my cost. Now clearly, I have made some very simplifying assumptions. If instead of 250 days, at 100, if I charge, where do we have this? Now you can already see that there is clearly a potential of profit. If instead of just 250, I had made it 300 at 100 only. If I increase my right hand side by 25%, then my left hand side also increases by 25%, and I'm earning, if I've increased my right hand side by 20% from 250 to 300, this also becomes increased by 20%, and I have the potential of earning 40 crore rupees per year at 100 rupees per car for 300 days of traffic. If I consider this to be 350, then my numbers start increasing more and more. So my cost gives me an idea of what I can do. And maybe if I am considering 350 and I still have to just reduce the dollar value, then this might come closer to something like a 70, okay, or an 80. We just have to do the calculation for it. So this is a number that I get from cost side. I've not even considered any value for the player till now. But let's look at what are the other things. We can do some competitive pricing. Well, I've already told you that we can, create a table of customer focused parameters. We could consider, if really people will prefer, you could do it multiple ways. There's no clear competitor here. You could see, what are the typical charges for a 10-kilometer bridge in different parts of the country, or typical bridges which save 1 hour 50 minutes for the charges for that, and figure out. That would be an indirect way of, figuring out from a competitive perspective. It's okay to ignore this because there's no real direct competitor. Or you could make a table between route A and route B, compare what are the parameters involved. But that will be an activity, little frivolous activity, because clearly the new route is more desirable, right? That's it. Now, in terms of value added, how do we go about the value added analysis? There is a fuel involved. So you have to understand here what is the value of an individual for an individual driver who's driving down this route. What all things they are saving on, which I can capitalize on. If instead of 2 hours, they're only taking 10 minutes. So 1 hour and 15 minutes of extra fuel that they would have spent in the traffic, that's saved. So I could figure out a way to estimate that. I know you can ask these numbers, what's typically the fuel consumption per hour. You can get a sense of that from your own analysis. Then you can do a maintenance that, okay, if the car is traveling less, the car might require lesser amount of maintenance. So I can capture a part of that value also. How do you do that? Well, you can assume that, the monthly charge of, let's say, maintenance is about 2,000 rupees. Assume that. A car travels for 4 hours every day and 25 days of the month. So 100 hours of car travel lead to 2,000 rupees of maintenance. So per hour maintenance ascription release 20 rupees. So if I am saving an individual 2 hours almost of car ride, then I can take 40 bucks. I'm reducing 40 bucks from the maintenance bill. I can probably take 30 out of that. Okay. So probably let's say maintenance is 4,040. This is 80. I can charge 60 from the maintenance budget. Fuel, let's say again, we do a similar calculation. We say like we save, maybe it's reasonable to assume we save 2 to 3 liters of fuel. 2 liters of fuel, let's say, on a conservative side. 1 liter costs about 75 rupees. So I'm saving 150 bucks. So 150 plus 60, already 200 rupees I'm saving. And I can capture part of that value. Then you are also saving them time. There are some people who would have a driver, so they can still utilize that time. And there's some people who might be driving on their own. So you can figure out the value of that individual's time. Even the people who have a driver driving their car, they might perhaps be more comfortable sitting at home or working in the office rather than spending the time in the car. How do you figure out the value of the time? Well, you can figure out what is typically the salary that they earn. What is the per day salary, per hour salary, 2 hours extra in the office. What is it that they could have earned if they had worked for 2 extra hours? Maybe assume just a fraction of that, because not every waking hour is spent earning money. So maybe, but you get a sense of what their value of the time is. Maybe take like 5%, 10%. And again, you will not attribute all of it because you will assume that, even in the car, they might be doing some productive work. They might be talking on the phone. People who have drivers might be working on their laptop. So you cannot attribute all. And perhaps last is that you could also figure out that instead of this one user, there's another class of user. I can also make money from other purposes. I can use perhaps billboards to raise money. So instead of 8,000 crores over 40 years, I might actually take off a significant amount of money just from billboards. So let's say I have over the 10-kilometer stretch, I have a billboard every kilometer. So I have 10 billboards because it's a high traffic area. Let's say I charge whatever 10,000 rupees a billboard per day into 250. So this becomes 1 lakh into 100 into 2.5. So 1 crore. Yeah, 2.5 crores I might be able to earn from billboards every year into 40. Let's say 100 crores. Over the life of the bridge, I can earn from billboards. So 10 billboards per day charge of every billboard into number of days. Now maybe this number instead of 10 can be 50. So this number instead of 100 becomes 500 crores. And instead of 8,000, then you have to only recover 7,500 crores. So you can figure out what really is the potential of the bridge for earning money. And you use part of the value-based pricing for that. And you can also figure out what are the other ways of monetizing this bridge. Okay. So I hope all of these points are clear on how do we go about pricing something. Okay. I thought this is an interesting example because it goes into many of the details of what is being looked at, and you might be typically asked such random questions in pricing, because why would you price a biscuit? Pricing is more difficult when it's more interesting when there are more difficult cases to price. Now, so what we have really been doing here is trying to understand what's the value of their time. Typically, you can also use a proxy to understand the value of their time. Let's say you have figured out, you have opened a gaming arcade and you want to figure out the admission price. So you might try to value it on the basis of what emotion this invokes in your patrons. What are the other places where they invoke the same amount of emotion? So they feel happy. Maybe they feel happy in an amusement park. Maybe they feel happy in a beauty salon, whatever. You have to figure out, depending on the service and the customer, what emotion, what need are you solving, and then price it according to the similarity or dissimilarity with that. Okay. Second is a multiplier. Now, multiplier is a very simple idea. It kind of gives me an upper bound typically of my value-based pricing or a range. Now, when we do all of these strategies, we'll end up getting a range. So cost-based, I said, can give me a lower range. The multiplier can at times give me an upper range. What does it mean? Let's take the case of an aeroplane. And I say that I want to, start serving, government has passed the policy. Now you can serve liquor in domestic airlines. And I have to figure out how much to charge for 30 ml or a can of beer. So I know that a can of beer so what I do is a multiplier. A packet of chips, which is 20 bucks on ground, is 100 bucks in a flight, let us say. So I have a 5x multiplier. So a can of beer, which is let's say 250 bucks on ground, from a multiplier perspective should be 1250. Now really the question is, does this number make sense? You might want to use all sorts of factors. The domestic flight ticket might be just 3 or 4 grand. Will people really want to spend 30 to 40% of that on just pricing? So on the basis of that, you might want to, reduce this number down to 800 and so on and so forth. The idea is that you can use this. Now the last number, really, the last thing is really based on elasticity. That once you have a range, and here in the bridge example also, I'll end up having a range. My cost gives me an answer, and my value gives me an answer. Perhaps the bridge example is not the best, but some other kind of services, you might, let's say, come up with 4 different price points. $1, $2, $3, $4. You multiply it by so at different prices, you might get different number of users. Let's say on campus, on any college campus, let's say you have a food joint which serves pizza. At 60 bucks, they will have different sales compared to if they were selling it for 500 bucks. So you have to figure out what is the amount of sale that can happen at each price point. and then whichever multiplication ends up giving me the highest amount of profit, that's my desired price. So I don't think highest price or lowest price, highest consumer base or lowest consumer base. It's really a function of both of them put together, which gives me the final highest profit, which is what I'm interested in. Okay. So now here you would want to have some sense of elasticity of the product, which is very difficult to come by in a real life setting. Some things you can really use to understand elasticity, and this is just the last point I'll make. You might run a pilot, you might, if you have the flexibility, you might do a study to understand how many users are at different price points. You might want to understand what's the time distribution. If everyone wants the same thing at the same time, then things are going to be fairly inelastic. Okay. And both the time distribution and the competition really is about, do people have alternatives there in terms of time? Can they consume at a different time? If yes, then they might not be so interested in paying a lot at a different time. Same, if you have a lot of competitors, then you might not have a lot of flexibility in changing a lot of prices. You might have to keep it at the lower bound. And let's say if your customers are rich versus poor, tourist versus resident, you might have different number of users for different price points. Like you might have seen that things tend to be more expensive at tourist locations because a lot of these vendors know that tourists are, as it is, not going to return. They don't need to maintain a relationship with them. So why give an attractive price altogether when they can charge a higher price, and then know that people are willing to spend money at that point of time? So they know their customers' characteristic. So just a small point, if you go with strategy 4, what are the things you might want to say? Now, this is not very practical from a usable perspective in a case, but if let's say you give that strategy at different price points, I want to explore different things, you might be asked, how do you understand how much customers you can get at different price points? And these would be the different strategies you can adopt. Okay. So I think that closes our pricing discussion. I hope both the strategies and the discussion gave you some idea how to go about such cases in the future.